because I mean you're a dedicated man of Odin, and well, I mean, so am I in the female aspect, and so we have a lot in common about that. And I would like to ask you, how did that came to be for you? How did that manifest itself, for lack of a better word, in your life?
Hmm. Well, that's a very interesting question, Tina, because it's kind of multifaceted. Um, Odin, or the old man as I refer to him affectionately, um, comes to visit adults mainly. He doesn't really have too much of like a thing with children growing up, because he'd rather, in my opinion, he'd rather that they formulate their own minds and opinions on a matter before he introduces himself. However, I was quite young, and I must have been about, let me see, 8 or 9 years old, and I grew up in kind of a very emotionally dark environment, and even at that tender age, I was kind of searching for something. And at night time, I'd look at my bedroom door, which was slightly ajar when was going to sleep. And I used to share a room with my brother, and he'd be over in the corner in his bed, and I'd be in mine in the other side of the room. And I'd look, and occasionally I see a very, very tall figure um, just glance around the door. Now, I didn't see any kind of features or anything like that, but he must have been like 6'4", extremely tall. You could see the top of his head just above the door, and he'd go away. And this would be the very early hours in the morning, and nobody else in the house fits that description. Um, and had this the, the the initial response to that, emotionally speaking, was quite fearful, because I didn't know what it was, who it was, or anything like that. And I had crazy dreams after I'd seen this character, and these dreams used to consist of huge tendrilled creatures floating through space, heading for our planet, heading for Earth, and it was like eldritch creatures from the books. I can't remember the author's name, but I think Robert E. Howard hit upon them. But there was a certain author, I can't remember who it is. I'm terrible for names, but he did the Cthulhu mythos and things like that. Can you remember his name, Tina?
Lovecraft.
Lovecraft, of course. Yes, it was very Lovecraftian, and these things I was looking at these things, and I'd never read the books. I never knew what it was. I went later on when I was in my mid 20s, when I started reading the books. These things were popping out. So he was kind of an intermediary, like a messenger of these things, and certainly these times, because it's all interlinked. Now, the first time I saw him, like visually, this is very, very rare for people that have anything. It's really rare. I was in the woods playing with my friends. We like to play army and stuff like that, and muck around with sticks and pretend to shoot each other and whatnot. And I went into the bracken, um, into the woods, and I hid. And I was waiting for people to come by so I could pop up and pretend to shoot them and stuff. That's how boys are, There was even girls that like to play this game, but us boys growing up, we didn't have Xboxes and PlayStations and stuff like that. So we made our own entertainment. Anyway, the woods and the environment really grew quite dark. It was like a cloud had passed over the sun, and a wind started blowing through the trees, and it was making a real, like, sort of eerie noise, like really, really spooky. And I heard this creaking in the tree, because the tree tops started swaying, and I looked up, and they were all birch trees, and in this birch tree there was a man hanging, dangling from the tree, with a noose around his neck, and he had all dark clothing on, like a cape or a shawl or a cowl or something on, and a wide-brimmed hat. Me, and he grinned at me, like a big grin on his face, like, and his head went back like that, and I was like, holy shit.